It's Saturday, May 2nd, 2020. As we sit out here on the West Coast, our beaches are shut down. The economy is frozen. People literally are just locked in their homes. Few people are out and about, but for the most part, the majority of people out here in California are just sitting at home, locked down. We don't have a lot of choices. Stores are closed. Most restaurants are closed. You can do takeout, but for the most part, there's just nowhere to go, nothing to do, because you're just not allowed to go anywhere. So I'm sitting here this morning and I'm just reading some of these articles while this economy continues to get devastated. This was on Reuters. Venezuela sets new price controls with eggs costing more than a month's wages. And I bring that up because we are now witnessing food shortages beginning here in America. Inflation in Venezuela right now, as I make this video, is 3,365%. And food costs are soaring, and we're going to begin to see some of the same things happen right here in America. Food prices have been soaring, and they're going to continue to soar much more as our processing plants are being shut down. We're having to eliminate a lot of our food, our poultry, our pork, our beef, because there's nowhere to put it, nowhere to process it, and prices. So we have an abundance of food, yet we're going to be paying more because there's nowhere to put it and nowhere to process it, as all these meat plants, poultry plants, pork plants are all shutting down. It's a really crazy time, and it's going to get much crazier. Here's an article right here in the Hedge today. SUVs are being parked in the middle of the ocean as auto inventory crisis deepens. As U.S. auto sales take the biggest hit we have seen in decades, if not history, U.S. ports are at capacity. A cargo ship with 2,000 Nissans was told to drop anchor back in April 24 that was coming into the Los Angeles port. It's still floating out there with 2,000 Nissans. Nowhere to put the cars, nowhere to put the SUVs. The ports are full. Again, there's nowhere to put the cars. And ask yourself this: who is going to buy all of these cars? We have car companies now leasing parking lots and acreage to park these cars because they have the car lots are full. There's nowhere to put these cars. So a lot of these automakers are leasing parking lots, renting acreage just to park the cars because they have nowhere to put them. And now we have cargo ships off the coast here floating for over a week with thousands of vehicles. Going to get crazy here. Here's another article. Somebody sent this to me the other day. U.S. rail traffic continues downward streak for the week ended April 25th. And this is just another bellwether of what's happening to our economy. Rail traffic, carloads and intermodal are down 28.2% this last week compared to the same week back in 2019. So the consumer is not spending money. The consumer is tapped out. The consumer is having his and her credit limits cut. And we're going to see shipping just devastated, whether it's barge, whether it's trucking, railroad, whether it's by air. We are going to see shipping across the board devastated, I think, for the entire year. And you have to ask yourself, what is going to bring us out of this depression that we are now starting to sink into? We have no new technology. The housing bubble is ready to burst. They're talking about $30 trillion government debt by this fall. What is going to bring us out of this depression if we are not making and producing goods here in America? A service-based economy, hospitality and leisure is not going to get us out of the greatest depression the world is about to see. Another article right here, U.S. manufacturing surveys show record collapse in output, orders, and jobs. Make sure all of you are verifying what I'm saying. Knowledge is power. And if you expect to survive what is coming, you need to be educating yourself. You must have knowledge. When we talk about preparations, one thing we don't really discuss is knowledge. Knowledge is extremely important. And the more knowledge you have, the more awareness and awakeness you're going to have. You're going to understand what's really happening in the real world, not the fake stock market, but the real economy in the real world. New orders, employment, and inventories fall at steepest rates since the global crisis. And worse still, output expectations turn negative for the first time in the series history. I mean, we are watching history literally on a daily basis now. Things that we have never seen in our lifetimes, many things that have never ever even happened in the history of this country are beginning to happen. CNBC, J. Crew is preparing for a bankruptcy filing that could come this weekend. J. Crew, another one of your big mall stores, $400 million in financing is what it is needed right now to fund the operation. So they're working to find somebody to lend them an awful big chunk of money. And it just seems literally now every day there is another clothier, some other retailer getting ready to file bankruptcy. And you can pretty much kiss your malls goodbye here in America. I've been receiving a handful of emails with people updating me what's happening in their areas regarding food shortages, meat, poultry, chicken. And I've had a handful of people tell me that they are noticing the butcher shelves empty, and not just short, but empty. And many people have told me that there are shortages, but they can still get meat, they can still get pork. But I've had people write me saying they can't get any. Their store is completely sold out. This was on the dailymail.com yesterday. America's meat crisis laid bare. Shelves are empty and processing plants forced to close. Let me know, comment down below what's happening at your local stores. I haven't seen the shortage here, but certainly from what I'm reading and from what a lot of you are telling me, you're seeing the shortages. Some stores are limiting purchases of meat, poultry, and chicken. I've seen a lot of pictures of that in a lot of the articles I've been reading, that you are limited. One thing we know for certain is, one thing I can verify is the price of meat, poultry, and pork is skyrocketing. And I think by the time we get deep into summer here, some people may be cutting a lot of this out of their diet because they're just not going to be able to afford it. One thing that I did weeks ago was I ordered more dry food. Everything that's going on right now, economically, socially, politically, if you can add to your food preparation, I think that that's a wonderful idea. I just received 3 months of emergency food yesterday, and I'm happy I did, because I'll tell you, we are living in a time with such uncertainty, unpredictability. I mean, just think where we're at right now. We're talking food shortages here in America while we're destroying record amounts of food, but we cannot process it. We're talking about food shortages in the United States of America. Just go back a few years ago. Who would have ever thought we'd be talking about food shortages here in America, let alone a frozen US economy? So here we are in 2020, food shortages, a frozen economy, a retail apocalypse, a fake stock market, etc. We all know those people that say this could never happen, that could never happen, that certainly would never happen in the United States of America. And look at what is happening right now in 2020. How about 50 million people now jobless in America? 30 million people have gone jobless in just the last 6 weeks. Many, still millions, waiting for their first unemployment check. 30 million people jobless in the last 6 weeks, and that does not include the people who have not been counted yet, the people who cannot get through on the phone lines, the people who can't get through on the websites. because all this is melting down. So in reality, the new number, the real jobless numbers in America are around 50 million. Who out there 10 years ago, if somebody would have told you that we're going to lose 50 million jobs in a matter of about a month and a half, that we're going to have 50 million people jobless in 2020, who would have ever believed that? It's happened. It's happening right now. And unfortunately, millions of these people still have not gotten a check. And these are people who cannot go one more day without getting an unemployment check. We've got a society now here in America, an economic system where people live paycheck to paycheck, hand to mouth. And we've got people waiting 4, 5, 6 weeks for a check, and the checks haven't arrived. Studyfinds.org. 40% of Americans will avoid public spaces long after this whole thing ends. That's why I believe it's going to be very, very hard for this economy to come back. An economy that was just full of pixie dust, a giant illusion before this whole infection started. I have a hard time blaming this infection on what's happening with the economy. When you have massive bubbles, massive money printing, when you are printing billions of dollars of debt to hold up this liquidity crisis in the banking sector, when you had 3 rate cuts in 2019, when in 2019 September we knew there was a liquidity crisis in our banking system and the Fed had to step in. Look, we all knew what was coming. So I think we've got to stop blaming this infection, because we're going to go back to a broken economy. We're going to go back to the same illusion, but it's been exposed. And a lot more people now understand the importance of why you don't have debt, you have minimum debt, or you have no debt at all, why you have a cash reserve cushion, why you have assets. I think a lot of people are beginning to wake up to why you should be preparing, but unfortunately, we're already into this and we're not going to come out of it. And many of the people now who are waking up, it may be too late for it because they don't have cash reserves. They've piled up debt, and now they're going to pile up much more debt because they're living on credit cards to deal with this collapse that we're in right now. And so for many people out there, for millions of people, it's already too late. And I hope if you're watching this video, it's not too late for you. And what's really sad is if we look over the last 6 weeks, we've lost 50 million jobs. In the last 6 weeks, the S&P 500 has increased by 30%. And that's the disconnect between Wall Street and the real economy. And it still amazes me that people believe everything is good every time they see the Dow Jones up or the S&P's up. Everything is okay, even though these are the same people who have massive amounts of debt, the same people who are waiting for an unemployment check, the same people that are now behind on rent or an auto payment. These are the same people that believe everything is okay because the Dow Jones is up, the S&P is up. Shocking. This is how dumbed down society has become, that the slaves don't even know that they're slaves. It's really sad. We were talking earlier that so many people have gone broke trying to look rich, and people put on this front. They lived in this fake world, this illusion. Everything's an illusion. The stock market's an illusion. Many things on social media are an illusion. A lot of people you and I know are living in an illusion, driving the car, living in the house, wearing the big watches. But they're going broke trying to impress you and I. And now these people have a real problem. And the problem is they already know it's game over. It's too late. They're selling the cars. They're selling the watches. Their biggest problem now isn't going to be impressing you and I. Their biggest problem now is going to be survival. feeding their kids, feeding themselves, paying the light bills. Many of these people are already defaulting on the cars, the watches, the jewelry, the mortgages, the lifestyles. And their situation is going to change excessively. Their standard of living is going to change. The days of trying to impress people like you and I are over. They are now in survival mode. So while we're on the topic of illusions and pixie dust, Peter Schiff was in an article this week and he's discussing fairy dust. And in this article, Peter says the economy is in a very bad spot, but most people believe it's going to bounce right back. He says these are the people who are high on the Federal Reserve fairy dust. He goes on to say U.S. GDP contracted by 4.8% in the first quarter. In January, we were being told this is the best economy in history. All this cheerleading we heard, yet the booming economy needed 3 rate cuts in 2019. The same day we get the awful GDP print, the stock markets rallied. Dow Jones was up 532 points. The S&P 500 was up 2.66%. More bad news is good news for Wall Street. This is the disconnect we have between the stock market and Wall Street and Main Street and the American people and the real economy. Look, Wall Street and corporate America do not care about you or I. They do not care about the real economy. They just care about the injections. They care about the fairy dust. This market, or these markets, are completely out of control, reckless, giant bubbles, giant illusions, no reflection of the economy. They are solely now controlled by the Federal Reserve. They are solely propped up by these massive injections by the Federal Reserve, by this massive debt creation. People have been led into an economic fantasy land by a trail of Federal Reserve fairy dust, Peter says. People believe things are going back to normal. They're not going back to normal because things weren't normal to begin with. We're heading into a full-blown depression. The best we can hope for is recovering from a depression to a recession, Peter Schiff says. The Fed is propping up the economy. They've been propping it up since 2008. It continues to prop it up today. The Fed just pumped $6.6 trillion into the economy. This past week, Jerome Powell promised to pump as much money as necessary. The Fed will throw the entire kitchen sink, pump as much money as necessary. They will do whatever it takes, keeping rates at 0%, whatever it takes, they're going to do. How would the Fed ever be able to raise rates given the levels of debt in this economy that we have? Think about that. Inflating the money supplies by trillions of dollars comes at a cost. Powell said the government shouldn't worry about national debt. He encouraged more borrowing, more spending to stimulate the economy. Powell and no one else has worried about the debt, Mr. Peter Schiff says. People think that this is a tiny speed bump, that this little collapse, they think it's a little minor collapse, a little minor speed bump. This high is going to wear off and people will realize the economy isn't going to come back, and they're going to realize just how bad this economy really was. You and I have seen what has been exposed. Many people now have taken off the glasses. They see what has been exposed, what's really going on. But most people with eyes they cannot see, with ears they do not hear, they ignore it. You have seen the exposure. These people will then realize the fairy dust is actually killing them. Yes, the $1,000 car leases, living beyond your means, living in a house where you can't afford the mortgage, buying things not knowing if you can afford it or not, but knowing that, oh, I can make the payment. People buy things today, they don't look at the price, they don't care. Can I make the payment? Can I impress people on social media? These people, look, the fairy dust is the debt. And people have been living on credit cards, they've been living on debt, they've been spending money they don't have. They've been going broke trying to look rich, to impress you, to impress me, to impress people out here, people they don't even know, people they don't even like. Going broke trying to look rich, trying to be stars on social media. They have been overdosed with fairy dust. And now reality has come to America, it's come to the globe, and people are going to pay a huge price for trying to be something that they're not. And I'm going to leave it there today. Again, we're just sitting here. Everything is pretty much closed. Probably go out and take a walk later on today or a drive. But it's going to be about 105 here today in Palm Desert. And people are just getting restless. This sitting around not doing anything is completely unhealthy. So if I can leave you with one thing, get out, take a walk today. If you have a pool, take a swim, take a drive, do something productive. Just get the blood flowing, get some sunshine. We got a lot of sun out here. I'm going to try and get a little bit of sun today and just do what I can do. But look, we are at a time that I can't even believe what is happening. And every day that this economy is shut down, it is destroying people's businesses, it's destroying their lives, it's destroying their futures. So look, take today. If you can add to your preparations, do that. If you can get some exercise, do that. If you can get some sunshine, do that. Do something productive. Try to stay as positive as possible. I know these are extremely tough times, but I believe that we're going to get through this. And hopefully this is going to expose much more of the corruption taking place in our government. It's going to expose politicians, and that people are going to wake up. Maybe people are going to wake up as they're sitting in their houses today with what's happening to their country, what's happening to this economy. I'm going to leave it there. Have a really good weekend. God bless every one of you. Thanks for watching.